all paying attention? No talking to someone else's girlfriend / wife. Pay attention. My name is Bruce Barritt. Here we go. I am reading from a prepared script written by Gavin Wilson. Peter Prophet, I assume my friend Bruce Barritt is reading this, and up to this point the evening has been quite successful. It's about to go downhill quite rapidly, if I have anything to do with it. My name is Gavin Wilson, and at the moment I'm about to float through the Russian countryside on a riverboat, wishing I could be thinking of anything but Peter Prophet. However, that is not the case. Peter asked me to do a roast for him, and I, during a weekend drug-infused moment, agreed to do so.
You found a pot roast.
Ah! You understand, I am speaking. You laugh when appropriate. So, I first met Peter, says Gavin, during the Kennedy administration. So I must have been about 14 at the time, and that would be Peter in his late 30s. Gavin says I had a summer job at Marshall & Lawton, an architect's firm located above the waterfront restaurant on East Broadway. The original waterfront, not Perangelo's place. Peter and I worked in a back room stuffing blueprints into a copier which stank of ammonia. Very vivid imagery. I remember Peter had a huge eye patch which covered half his face, and during the course of the day he would remove it and pour salt into a weeping sore above his eyeball. It seemed he had ripped his eyelid off and had stuck it back on. Now, a lady this evening came up to me and said, I've known Peter since I was a teenager. I knew him when he fell off his bike and he messed up his eye and all he would do was stare at you. Peter told Gavin, if you pour salt into a wound, it will leave a scar for life. So if you go up to Peter and stare into his face, but please be careful because he might capture your soul, you will see a haggard scar above one of his eyes. Check it out. He's going to stop here and allow you to stare into his eyes. That's what it says, stage directions. I shall stop here, Bruce, while everyone looks. Okay, I'll carry on. Oh, while we're at it, Prophet is not his real name. The families are from a long line of Sakha natives who were hunted for their skins by the Cossacks. Peter's father, Johannes, later changed to John, escaped into Western Europe during the early 1930s. He next appears in the late 1940s posing as a Latin teacher in Salta. John Prophet used to boast of an exemplary war record, although it was later found out he did not fight for the Allies. Now, some of you might know that Peter, as a young teenager, had problems with masturbation. His father was heard to remark, for Christ's sakes, this boy has to beat something. So he was given a drum. So whenever you see Peter hanging away in a band, remember his humble beginnings. I'm just reading from the script. Many years ago, says Gavin, Peter asked me about once a year to have lunch with him at Lobster Pot. That being the only restaurant on the island that would give him a charge account. Gavin says, I was falling asleep listening to Peter drone on about some girl that he'd screwed in a cave when he announced he'd bunked everyone in the restaurant. Gavin writes, I looked across to the next table where old Mr. Ferguson was drooling. mouth with one hand and clutching a colostomy bag with the other. Him too? said Gavin. And Peter just smiled. A few months ago, when Peter asked Gavin to do a roast for him, he invited Gavin to lunch to discuss it. This time it was rusticos, and Gavin and his wife Linda came along. Now, let's get something straight, says Gavin. You don't ask someone to lunch to discuss all the horrible things that are going to be said about you unless you're Peter Providence. During the course of the lunch, which by the way he kept reminding us was on him, he produced this huge file which contained his life story, which includes startling revelations about his favorite foods and drinks, including espresso and eggs Benedict. Did you know that, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. I did not know. Gavin did not know. Did you know Peter liked eggs Benedict? I sure as hell didn't. Thank Christ I was sitting down when I read that. So anyway, we finally come to the end of this marathon lunch, and Peter makes a big display by calling over the waiter and asking for the bill, and then beams at Linda and says, I asked for the bill because I could do so. Kind of that. I could do that. The bill arrives. Peter makes a very big deal about selecting a credit card. The waiter scurries away, so we sit, and we wait, and we wait. Gavin says, I need to get home and watch some paint dry. Linda's starting to get saucy, and finally the waiter creeps over towards us, crouched over as if he's trying to stop something falling out of his stomach. There are muttered whispers, and I overhear, but we tried 3 times. So anyway, apparently Linda paid the bill. But we digress. Let us get back to this large file that Peter gave Gavin, full of exciting information about his private life. There's a whole chapter on the things that Peter hates. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I think my top list would have been Adolf Hitler and perhaps Satan. Peter, on the other hand, hated men wearing hats indoors and cable TV programming. Get a load of that. He hates TV programming more than Hitler. Many years ago, Peter's dad started up the Bermuda Ballet Association, a very worthy enterprise. And in support of his dad's achievement, Peter bought this enormous codpiece. Now, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps you don't know this theatrical term, a codpiece. You don't. It's an artificial penis of enormous size. Peter bought this enormous codpiece which he stuffed down the front of his trousers. And when he was talking to you, he would stand so close to you, this damn codpiece would keep banging into your head. Anyway, it came to a close when Peter was standing on the City Hall stage having a huge argument with Marjorie Pettit, who was complaining that Peter could not keep time with the rest of the band. Peter suddenly gesticulated wildly, dislodging the codpiece, which in turn twisted his genitals, changing the specific gravity of his nutsack, and he toppled over into the orchestra. So Gavin writes, hey, I'm in line to go through Russian immigration. I gotta go. The guy in front of me, from the expression on his face, has just gone through an intense anal probe. Now there's a birthday present, Peter. Time to wind it up, writes Gavin, all the way from Russia. Happy birthday, Peter. Only Gavin. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I remark, this is off script now, because I gotta tell you, when I came here this evening and saw the cornucopia, the vast array of Bermudian society that was on this boat, I said, I want to see the Venn diagram of Peter's life, because there's intersecting circles. Right in the center is Peter Providence, and there's an amazing array of people here this evening. So thank you, Peter, for having this second set downstairs, right? Is anybody downstairs? No, everybody's up here. Oh shit, then we should have 3 cheers. Get me a Heineken so I can toast the birthday boy. The whole time since you were Do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you all.
Okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa! Whoa. Don't talk amongst yourselves just yet. Hold on. Hold on. Yep. Peter would like to say a few things.
I'd like to thank you all for being here, but more than that, for being so diverse. I was brought up that way. I wasn't brought up to have any particular type of friendship.
We can't hear you, Peter. Come closer then, goddammit. Here, look, stand up.
No, he might fall.
No standing? Okay.
No, the point is,
Come closer.
The point is, this is so diverse because of my parents.
This is so diverse, says Peter.
Because of my parents.
Because of his parents. Thank you, Leigh.
They were liberal intellectuals.
They were liberal intellectuals, says Peter, for those in hind. If you can't hear, come fucking forward. Don't stand there back going like this. Come forward. Jesus Christ, are you deaf? Yes, there's empty seats. Come forward, thank you. Anyway, Peter's continuing to speak and I shall interpret for the hard of hearing.
Okay, so this is a very, very interesting, eclectic group of people.
A very, very interesting, eclectic group, Ian.
And that's the way I was brought up, you know? Dance, theater, opera, jazz, music. I've got a lot of musician friends who are working tonight who couldn't be here. And I hope they're enjoying themselves, and I wish they could be here, and they were invited, but they are earning a living. And we have a couple of us are here who aren't earning a living. So thank you all for coming, and there's one more group coming on, which I don't think anybody has heard, in Bermuda. And they're all Bermudians, retired from the Royal Bermuda Regiment, and it's a five-piece group.
Blues beat.
Yeah, it's the Bermuda Blues Band. So at 8:30,
Blues beat band.
they'll be up here.
Right. A toast to Peter Prophet.